David, thanks for hosting and putting this out. David, if you want to watch the participants coming in, I'm going to close
Will
that down, so I'll be ignoring that.
will do.
Welcome, everyone. So a couple weeks ago, I guess it was a couple months ago, we had our first Zoom version of this where we talked about missing middle. And at very popular request, we're going to do another version where we're going to go a little bit more in depth to some of the other municipalities under the SSMUH, small scale multi-unit housing. And the plan is to pivot from this into more details of different areas. Future meetings will include construction costs, some of the legal process, real estate disclosure statements, and also some of the other nuances of each of the municipalities. But today, since we're starting off on the first one, there is a little bit of a recap on our first meeting that we had. So I'm going to share my screen. So if I'm looking off to the side, it's just because I'm wanting to see the same thing that you're all seeing. So can you all see that on your screen? An Invision PowerPoint showing for everyone? David, you got that? Thumbs up? You're on mute? Okay, perfect. So Invision Developments is the company that myself and two of my team members joining the call, Keith and Xenia, are part of. We're a development consultant helping people to make the right decisions on design sooner by getting a proper proforma and cost analysis done at the key intervals in the process. And we're going to chat a little bit about that today. But a key part of our knowledge is understanding the different municipalities and the different rules. So we're hoping to share that with you today. So Keith, you recognize in the call, Xenia and myself. This is a computer AI generated image. I know that it's a much better version of me than I can pull off. So I thought I'd point that out. We've got some slides here just explaining what we do. This here is a quick synopsis of the traditional development method. In missing middle and the point of today's meeting, the traditional method is actually what the municipalities are trying to get away from as well, which is a long, lengthy process of going through trying to find out if your project is viable or not. But we also have streamlined that process as well, which we'll chat a little bit about multifamily, multi-use, land assemblies, and some other pieces later on. So I'll come back to that. I'm just going to skim down. These are just some slides on us. So let's start off. What is missing middle? Again, some of these slides are recycled. There's a lot of new ones added, but this is some for those of you watching that joined the first meeting. This is a recycled slide. So missing middle is a new policy in the Regional District of Victoria where they're looking to streamline development and bring forward a missing middle. So these are projects with more robust zoning that allows developers to build a range of housing between single family detached homes and mid to rise apartment buildings without the need of rezoning. So on a regular lot, that's up to 6 units. And on a corner lot, that's up to 12 units. And these can be split into 3 main groups. So houseplexes. Houseplex looks very much like a house, but this is split into 6 units. Corner townhomes. So these are more your traditional townhomes, and these can be row houses split, or some of them can be stacked towns where you actually have singular floor units on the ground floor. Within missing middle, you can go 3 stories up. And so we would look at different lot amalgamations to see what would fit. But this is an example of a corner townhouse where you can fit up to 12 units. And some heritage conserving infills. So some properties have a nice existing home that has some heritage designation or a home that wants to be saved with some space to put a new infill dwelling on it. So that's something that the City of Victoria is very open to as well. The other program is small scale multi-unit housing. And this is the different program. So if you live anywhere else in the province of BC that's considered an urban containment boundary, or a municipality with over 5,000 people, that you can build up to 4 units on your lot. So the big difference is Victoria being 6 units on a regular lot. So on the same lot size in Victoria, you can put 6 units where you can only fit 4 in Saanich, Esquimalt, View Royal, Oak Bay, etc. Meaning that you get a very different valuation of your land because of your density that you can achieve. So what is missing middle? Missing middle does have some requirements to have 3-bedroom units, which is when people are doing more condo projects, they rarely build 3-bedroom units. So it's an attempt to provide more units for family, and they can kind of come in a variety of ways. So we're going to get into some more meat and potato of this coming down. There are some exceptions in these other municipalities. So this is all municipalities other than Victoria. So the ruling is a minimum of 3 units on parcels that are 280 meters squared or smaller, and a minimum of 4 units on parcels of 280 meters squared or bigger, and some exceptions apply. There are some areas that allow up to 6 units near frequent bus stops. And each municipality, we have 11 municipalities for around 500,000 people. So there's a lot of different sets of rules floating around with some small variances. And today we're going to dig into a little bit with Saanich and a deep dive into Esquimalt. So our process that we work with is kind of broken into 3 main pieces when working with these small scale developments: project feasibility and project viability study. This is where we look at what will be a likely fit for the lot, what is possible, and what's some projections on profitability. Then we go into schematic design. This is where we look at actually floor plans and what can fit. And in phase 3, we get into development permit or building permit and the next phases of drawings. In our initial site feasibility, I'm going to go through this with anyone who has any questions on this in more detail. But basically, we get to know your lot, and we use the publicly available data that's available to review the options, including reading all the zoning and bylaws for your area. And what we're really trying to find is what the residual land value is and what the most profitable option is. Now, just because you can build 6 units or 4 units, it doesn't mean that the land is worth the same amount for each. So this here is just a little slide to explain what the value of your land is to a developer. So we refer to that as the residual land value. So if you have a lot that you're looking to sell and it's been targeted for missing middle, or that be a great lot for redevelopment, it doesn't mean all of a sudden it's worth millions and millions of dollars. In fact, some properties are worth more as a single family dwelling as they are than if you were to tear it down, because you lose the value of your home and then to sell it for lot value. So this is just a little explanation of what someone's value of their lot is. So the first thing we need to do, step 1, is figure out what the value of the property would be when your project's complete. So step 1, if it's a rental, we determine the income-based value of the rental, which is normally done with a cap rate and an application of what the current rental rates are. And a condo is a little simpler. We'd get normally up front, before we get too involved, we'd communicate with your realtor and we'd ask them, hey, if we built this design and these units on this property, what would they sell for? Can you give us an expectation? We'd get that value and then we build out a chart. So in this case, we have a project worth $4,096,956 as an anticipated sale value plus GST. And then we have the costs. So we need to figure out all the costs. Well, that's the commissions to sell all the units, the new home warranty and pre-sale marketing costs, the construction hard costs. That's the actual materials and labor to build the building. A contingency, we normally factor in 5 to 10% depending on your build type. Construction soft cost, these are municipal fees, the financing costs to build the project, and your planning consultants, and any project management. The total of these costs, that should be all the money spent. So when you buy the project, this should represent all of the money needed to bring it to completion. Subtotal being 2.4 million. Developers, when they take their money and they risk them on building, they have a target in mind. And the banks who finance developers want to see that a developer, before they'll approve a loan, are making around a 20% profit. So if the value is just under 4.1 here, and a project costs 2.44 million to build, and the target was a 20% profit, and it costs about $64,000 to go through the design and getting a development permit submitted, or to get an understanding that you could get that approved, the residual land value would be $890,000, meaning someone could pay $890,000 for this lot, an imaginary lot, pay all these fees, and make 20% profit building a project. So if you had a piece of land and someone was wondering what the value of it would be, we need to figure out what you can do, how much it'll cost, what type of development it is. Now, if a developer was building a rental, they might not have a target of 20% profit. If someone's selling a condo, it's a one-time investment. They build it, they take on all the risk of the units maybe not selling, or cost overruns, or costs going up as they build. So they want to target about 20%. But if someone was building a rental project, they're going to make money off that from the rents for years and years to come into the future. So they might build this at closer to a 0% profit, as long as the rents were high enough to meet their needs. I'm going to go down. And so just page 2 that I already explained, so I'll skip through that. This is just an example of what you can fit on an SSMUH lot, and just analyzing 2 options. So this is a maximum versus optimal square foot. So this is an example of a lot that's 50 feet wide and just over 100. Xenia, you know this actual lot. Do you remember the square footage if you're still around?
I don't remember. I can check.
Okay. Not
It's
super.
about 6,100 square feet, but I can double check.
So this is an SSMUH lot of around 6,100 square feet. And we've done a study just showing a couple options and what the different value would be. So a couple things. Right now, this has 4 parking stalls and an amenity bike storage area here at the front. And the parking is the surface in the front. In this case, we have 4 units that are side allocation. So they enter down the side here. And then there are 2-story units or 3-story units on the same footprint. Now, what do you think is going to make more profit? 4680 total build, meaning a 2-story or a 3-story? This is the interesting part, is most people we meet and talk to automatically think that building the most possible on the lot is the best way to go. And that's not always the case. So this here is the 2-story calculation to illustrate a project. So in this case, we've got 4 3-bedroom units that are 1,170 square feet. And in this municipality, we're guessing that this would be the high end of the market. $895 plus GST is what these units would sell for. 3-bedroom units. This is in the Esquimalt area, where there's a lot of newer condos being built. They're selling in this range, but there's not a lot of 3-bedroom stock available. So that's where the this particular group's realtor thought the pricing would be on this one. Here's some pricing that we have in here. Hard, soft costs, 21, 20% profit. This one would carry a residual land value of $770. And someone could pay up to $770 for this and still make a 20% profit. And they're selling entry-level stock that are within a majority of people's qualification for families. And when we looked at the 3-story version here, higher costs in, higher value. The total profit here is showing is higher, 20%, but the land value would have to be $120,000 lower. They would have to buy this lot for $650,000 to hit a 20% profit margin. Or if they paid $770, they would actually make almost the identical profit as building the smaller unit. And these are quite a bit larger because they have a 3rd story. But in this particular area, we have 3-bedroom units that are rather large. And then they're selling with an over $1 million price point, which in this particular case, they were thinking they'd rather target sub $900,000 pricing because there are more people that would qualify to find that missing housing unit. Now, if you were to build this project in a different area, 1,700 square feet, you had the same 6,100 square foot lot, and the sale price was higher. Like if you were building in Rockland or on the Oak Bay border or some other areas of Saanich, or other areas where people are wanting a larger unit and willing to pay that north of $1 million price point, the residual land value would go up. So if this was selling somewhere else and these were, 1,700 square foot, we're selling for more like 1.2 million or 1.17, then the land you could pay, if you paid $100,000 more or you sold these for $100,000 more, the costs wouldn't necessarily change, but then the land value you could pay is up to $1.05 million. So it really depends on the area of town you're in and what type of unit is going to sell to the people that would buy in the market that your property is coming to market in. So in this case, it actually made more sense to do a 2-story option because they had more equity in the land up front. They bought the land below this price and they actually had money in their pocket from day one by building a smaller unit. So going down and looking at that a bit. So in this case, the 2-story actually made more sense than the 3-story. Now this isn't always the case. Depends on the lot, the area, and the product that the market wants for that area. So I'm going to go down. This just chats a little bit about the next phase. So we would do a little bit of a study on a property where we look at different layouts, different options, to help get direction on what would fit and what would be marketable on the property. And we do this on purpose to a lower level of detail. Xenia, who's with us from XV Architects, is a master of knowing what can fit inside these rather plain boxes. That helps guide us to know what we can do later. So I'm going to go down here. And the next phase, after we figure out what to put on a piece of land, is then we can go in. And this is an example of that, what can fit on a 6,100 square foot lot. And this is called a schematic. And right here we have, this side is the ground floor. So you enter into these units. There's a little bit of a covered area here where you enter in. There's a flight of stairs up. There's a bathroom, living room, dining, kitchen, and a bedroom. All of the units being the same, except these ones obviously have more exterior windows as their end units. All have patio access onto small little backyards. And then entering and going up the stairs, you arrive at the top of the stairs to a second bathroom and a master bedroom. Oh, a master bedroom here, sorry, with a walk-in closet and a 3rd bathroom, and then another bathroom or another bedroom here. So in this case, we've got 2 large bedrooms and 3 baths that you can fit on a single lot. So you can have, this is a total of 3 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 12 bedrooms fit, and 12 bathrooms on a single lot. In terms of phase 3, there's quite a bit of work that we help with, consulting with all of the other professionals to make sure that your project comes together properly. And this is some of the work that we do. And this is an example of what the renderings would look like for that type of project. So if you have just a fairly basic lot, you can fit 4 units. That's what we've got, an outside rendering of this project for now. We can work with all types of different designs. Xenia's got fantastic taste, so she just needs to know a little bit of your vision to put that together. But this can fit on pretty much any standard lot in most municipalities. Something that we do when we go through this is just an example of the type of detail we go into when we cost estimate these projects. So we go in and we break them down into all the general conditions. These are things like your staff, your construction management, superintendents, foremen, print drawings, even Zoom boom, engineering and surveys, all of the costs, all of the site work, demolition, concrete. We go to this would be considered a Class D budget that we put together. And we want to do that to make sure we understand what the cost of this is when we put together these feasibility studies. That's the level of detail that we put in to these hard cost budgets. Good spot for me to pause and see if there's any questions on missing middle before I go into municipalities in specific. Anyone have anything to discuss?
Just to reiterate, Tyler, missing middle is just Victoria. And then the other program is for the rest of British Columbia.
Yes.
Is there a specific zoning that this is for, or is it for all zoning?
Well, and there was someone asking to see the soft cost slide. Yeah, I'll show some soft costs again. Great question. So Mike, the SSMUH is just more about the lot sizing. And obviously if you have grandfathered or more density in your zoning, but this is to take away from rezoning or changing of zonings. So this is residential, basically any residentially zoned lot that meets the size requirements and the location requirements within them. There are some specific restrictions in some of the municipalities, like Esquimalt has a tsunami zone restriction. In North and West Van, they have some restricted building schemes that they slapped on properties that stop you from going and building 4 units, where the restricted building scheme is in place saying you can only build 1 unit per certain size. So there are some areas that stop this, but for the most part, if this is a regular zoned lot, it's supposed to take precedence, and this came down at the provincial level.
Thanks for that.
Okay. There was one request to look at a soft cost slide again, which I don't know if I have one handy. Let me just see. This was not soft cost. This was our construction estimate. So not a soft cost, but this just shows general requirements aren't considered soft costs. This here has soft costs are all of the costs of all of the things needed on site to build the project, outside of the different divisions of construction. So that's just a little estimate of all the things that go in there. We do carry some things like some extra contingency in here. We've got course of construction insurance, which is technically a soft cost. This here is just an example of the type of report that we put together when we review a project to see what's viable. So in this case, this is just a sample of a cover sheet. This here does show some soft costs here. So this is a proforma that we put together to look at one example and everything that we include. We look at it from a rental basis. We look at what units would rent for. We look at what they would sell for. And then we do include energy modeling, code consultants, mechanical. This whole section here is the listing of what we would refer to as soft costs. Different municipalities are going to have different municipal fees in here. But normally on a project, you think of, before it was about 15% of each project would be made up of soft costs of the total project costs. Now it's closer to 20. So in this budget, it's a total budget including land of 2.8, with 700,000 being land, so 2.1, and you have about 400 grand as soft costs. That's around 22% is soft costs on a missing middle project. This is just another page where we're doing another comparison. These are some examples of some different designs that we've been working with on some other projects locally, just to kind of see a little bit more of our work. And now we're going to move into Esquimalt and Saanich, of which Xenia is going to help us a little bit to navigate any questions specific to Esquimalt. We've done some extra prep to talk about Esquimalt and some of the pros and cons of developing in Esquimalt right now. So I'm going to go down. So a deeper dive, small scale multi-unit housing in Esquimalt. Xenia, do you want me to just do a quick walkthrough, and then do you want to maybe be open to taking some questions after?
Yeah, sure.
So in Esquimalt, this drawing here, by the way, came off the provincial BC Ministry of Housing's. They did requests for information and had someone come in to design standardized housing that will fit on all lots. And there's a guide there that shows these. So if you want to dig into that, David and myself can email that out to the group. But these are some of the examples there. These aren't Envision's designs, but these are the ones that were sent into the BC Ministry of Housing. So Esquimalt, a couple things with them. They have done the adoption of small scale multi-unit housing, and they have some interesting pieces to theirs. So they actually have a few different options. So they have a new definition of small scale multi-unit housing, which is small scale multi-family housing. And they permit up to 3 dwellings on parcels of 280 square feet or less, up to 4 dwellings on parcels between 280 meters and 1 acre in size. And in restricted zones that would otherwise permit single family and 2 family homes. So even though your lot's large, right now Esquimalt's saying, hey, we don't want to look at going higher than 4 units per existing lot, because they're trying to keep people away from going through rezoning and more comprehensive development process. They did add 2 other designations as well. And I'm going to just actually skip through that and talk. So this is some of the zone table and information on what the minimum lot size is, minimum lot width for each of the classifications. So there's a small lot zone that allows up to 3 units, medium lot, 4 units, transit. Xenia, is this 6 on transit? There we go. And then waterfront lot is 4 units, but a waterfront lot, they're wanting it to have a larger square footage if it's one of those beautiful waterfront lots in the Esquimalt. So there's some restrictions on here. All of these things we take into consideration when building. And this is an example of that we pulled off the website of the small scale lot that allows up to 3. So this is minimum lot size around 3,000 square feet. And there's some, I don't know, Xenia, do you know offhand how wide is 8.5 meters? Do you have a calculation for that? Keith, can you look that up? It's a pretty skinny lot.
27 feet, almost
27'9".
Yeah. So Esquimalt is open to developing up to 3 units on very small lots. And so that is in this first phase. The next phase is needing a wider frontage at 10 meters and a minimum lot size of 3,000 square feet to fit up to 2 units. And I'll let Xenia give us a little bit more of an update later. But right now, Esquimalt is having some interesting challenges with approving parking. Right now, in these areas where you're building 2 duplexes, they're allowing 1 parking stall per unit if you're building a duplex, so 2 duplexes on the lot. But if you were to build these together in 1 fourplex designation, the current bylaws are asking for more parking. Is it 2 to 1, Xenia?
Yeah, this is just a residual from a very old parking bylaw that they had. For whatever reason, they had a larger parking requirement for townhomes than they do for duplexes. So right now, as of right now, if you were to build 4 townhomes, like the project that we showed a few slides back, you would need to provide 2 parking stalls per unit, which basically will not fit. They're in the final stages of approving their new parking bylaw. So this is an unintended consequence. So they are in the final stages of approving their new parking bylaw, where it will be 0.5 stalls per unit. So 4 units would require 2 parking stalls, but essentially until that is done in hopefully December or January, duplexes are in Esquimalt.
Yeah, so we're seeing the development of 2 separated units. The benefit of having 1 fourplex, there's some pros and cons to having 2 duplexes. You know, less exterior walls if they were all conjoined. Like if these 2 units were butted up to each other, you have less walls. It is harder to fit some parking, so you might have more efficiency in your design as a fourplex unit, but not having shared walls with your neighbors might sell for more. So doing a study together on what makes more sense for your project is necessary. And what we've heard is that Esquimalt is looking to not restrict development to just duplexes, but it hasn't been approved yet. This is an example of a transit lot. Xenia, you were part of a transit lot rezoning recently, weren't you, on one of your projects? With
I was close to it, but no, it wasn't by as of right or anything.
Yeah. So these are just some examples where they've allowed 6 units in a transit area. So minimum lots square footage. And
just to interrupt you, Tyler, this is also not yet approved. This is just in the making. So as of right now for Esquimalt, it's up to 4 maximum. They are shooting for this. They're hoping to get to that, but this will come out only in once their OCP is updated.
Awesome. So another great reason to come in and chat with you. So if you have a piece of land and getting to market and getting your units or getting your home built faster, maybe going with the existing grandfathered rules or getting some guidance on the likelihood of getting 6 units approved if it makes the most sense. Something to note, when you go up to 6 units, you're going to need commercial financing to finance it. And if you're tearing down your home and building 4, subject to qualification, of course, you can still get residential financing to build 4 units, 1 for yourself to live in with 3 rentals. And CMHC is coming out with a new program where you can actually refinance your mortgage for homes up to I think it's 1.995 million to build additional units that will fit in nicely with this program. The new CMHC announcement isn't out yet. These are some of the exempt lots: tsunami hazard lots, restricted parcels over 4,000. And we can chat a little bit more if there's any specific questions on that, but that's just a map that you can find on the city. We have put together some information on SANICH as well, but rather than go in and dive into another municipality in their small rules and designations. For today, we're going to stick with the Esquimalt and see if there are any questions. I noticed there's quite a few realtors in here. Any questions you have about developing in Esquimalt or Victoria?
My question, Tyler, would be, if I was talking to a client, and they wanted to have the most profitable development scenario, would that be Victoria?
It all depends.
Right.
Victoria allows the most density, and density normally means more profit because you're fitting more units. And the smaller a unit, the higher dollars per square foot it normally sells for. But it really depends on the lot itself. So I wouldn't pick the city, I would pick the lot. Some lots have different issues, restricted covenants, prohibitive trees, protected trees, prohibitive landscaping, rock outcrops, things like that, that might make it more complicated. Slopes. So really it comes down to the lot itself. So a nice flat lot in the city of Victoria that you can put 6 units on, that's a little bit over 50 square feet. It's a pretty good one. Now, the other thing is the bigger the lot isn't always the better. So some clients have come to us with really large lots, and what we're finding is they're almost good candidates for subdivision, but not all municipalities are wanting to look at taking one larger lot. We had someone with around a 15,000 square foot lot, and that particular municipality was like, we don't really want to look at subdividing that into 2 7,500 square foot units so you can put 4 units on each of the lots. We'd much rather just approve 4 units on the whole thing. And because these new rules and the municipalities are busy approving these 4plexes, it's actually getting harder to do more traditional types of development, go through rezoning and subdivisions and those processes, because they're really wanting to play with the new tools that they have that they've worked on. Hence the Esquimalt wanting to go 4 units all the way up to an acre of land. Now, if you had an acre of land, we'd probably want to look at it and look at what is the highest and best use and talk to the city on your behalf to find out what you can do with it. Anyone got any questions about, any more specific questions about Victoria or Esquimalt for development? Max, you're muted though. There you go. Welcome,
Hey, man,
Max.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, so is the Esquimalt's OCP changing, just going back to that, if you had an acre of land, highest and best use is definitely not a 4plex, in my opinion, depending where it is, if you're close to town. But are they reassessing their OCP early 2025 to change that? Or what's the status on that?
So not just Esquimalt, every municipality in British Columbia is compelled by the province to update their OCP by the end of 2025. So all of these OCPs, some of the municipalities were halfway through updating theirs and like paused it. Like for example, Souk, once they heard this is coming out, they just essentially paused their OCP from coming out so that they can then say, so that they don't have to update it twice. But all of them will be either updating an OCP or issuing, basically updates rather than either releasing a fully new OCP or smaller updates. We're gonna start seeing these drafts circulating soon. Probably it usually takes municipalities about a year to really get an OCP started and finished. So we're gonna start seeing these drafts shortly, like by March-ish, I would say.
Right. Okay. So yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So it probably makes sense if anyone's looking at those sorts of larger properties, it probably makes sense to wait until that's come out to sort of see where they're sitting.
Yeah, that said, Esquimalt is happy with how their development is going. They're meeting all of the targets and all of their guidelines that the province and they themselves have established. So I'm not expecting, there's gonna be something in there because this OCP is meant to, you know, be current, quote unquote, for the next 5, 6 or so years, 7 years. So they'll upzone some areas, but general feeling in Esquimalt is that they don't feel like they're behind, or they don't feel like they need to be super aggressive. So we're not expecting, you know, humongous changes.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought I would step in and really quickly decode some of the acronyms for anyone that didn't know. OCP is Official Community Plan, and it's a document that all municipalities have that you can find on their website, and it includes some zoning maps. And the Official Community Plan is kind of a target for different areas around their municipalities where they're supposed to designate what they want in the future. And the new provincial government mandate was saying that they wanted to remove public engagement from development that met the new OCP guidelines. So for example, if your property is within an area that had 6-story buildings designated in the OCP to go up there, and you happen to have a residential home and it's designated for 6 stories in the OCP, when it goes through the process, the development process, the public engagement was no longer a step that could stop that from happening. Because in the past, there were some areas where the cities wanted buildings to go up. The people got the land together and different community groups voted it down. So they've taken away the ability of the community to vote down these if they comply with the OCP or the Official Community Plan. Great question, Max. We'll see. Development's been an interesting game for the last little while, because for a while before this, SSMUH and Missing Middle have come out. The play was more assembling larger parcels of land to then get them changed to things like townhouses and multifamily. And that seems to have taken a little bit of a backseat for the time being. Anyone else got any questions about Esquimalt or City of Victoria?
I got one more just about the tsunami zone in Esquimalt on those waterfront lots. What are the actual restrictions on those lots?
I may have shot myself in the foot, Max, if I'm the one answering that question, because I actually have to go and read it. But Xenia, do you know the answer to that?
Yeah. The idea is that you can still apply for, but it's just no longer up to the planning to decide. The development director of development, it doesn't have the authority to sign off on your development anymore. You have to go to council and you have to make your case.
Right.
And then it would kind of depend if you can find, like in our case, when this first came out, my husband and I were like very much involved in, we were writing emails, and our point to council was that they shouldn't allocate tsunami zones, because this really is, they're kind of taking away development opportunities from, and these waterfront lots remain for kind of the richest of the rich, right? So we were trying to make a point that current building codes are so great at structural, you know, and for seismic requirements and for all of that, that older building in a tsunami zone, which what these buildings are, will perform much worse than a newer one. So they should allow the development in these lots, and not to mention that, as I said, that opening it up to a different segment of the population would just be great for everyone, because right now owning a new waterfront home is just so unattainable. So anyways, they did say what they said to me at that time, oh, we'll figure it out later. Like, you can still apply and you can still ask, and we'll judge case by case. You know?
This is the tsunami zone, by the way. This is the map. this blue color here depicts the tsunami zone. So there's some full neighborhoods here going down, but
Yeah, and sometimes it like touches your lot by a hair, like somewhere where the it just literally just touches it, and most of your lot is perfectly developable, but they've just painted it as unavailable for development. So I think some of these are still going to be a very good case, but it's a rezoning, it's no longer a delegated development permit.
which
Yeah.
is what they've done in Vancouver as well with some of the restricted covenants that they've had, or restricted building schemes. It just gave them a way to say no without being swept up.
Yeah.
Which protects some of these neighborhoods.
Right.
Great
Right.
question, Max.
Cool. Thanks for the insight there.
Xenia, an insider with all the scoop. This is fantastic.
I've got a question in relation to the fact that we have some realtors on the call tonight. I understand that you have a program, Invision Developments, will come to your property or your client's property to do an assessment for about $2,000, and it's very, very in depth. I know you've done one for me, and my client just is over the moon about what they got for the value of $2,000, and it's something that can be used to promote the property and show its the highest and best use and value for the lot. So maybe you can just touch on that, Tyler.
Yeah, I in the report I did show a little bit of what one of those reports looked like. So the goal with the $2,000 review is whether someone's listing a home for sale that has potential development potential, especially if it was a more complicated lot or it looked like it might have high development potential, is really pinpointing what that residual land value would be, because it's really hard to understand what a developer is willing to pay, and to, if there was a risk, if it did have to be rezoned or subdivided, we can really show what those costs are to help pick the right price if you're listing a home. Or if you're looking to buy a lot and do some development on it, we can help to analyze the lot to see if it's the right lot. So during your condition period, we can come in, we do a site review, we look at all the publicly available information, we look at the setbacks for that area, and we start to draw those boxes. And you get a report that's what I was showing in the beginning of this video, where we model out 3 or 4 layouts on a property to see what you can achieve. And then with that, gives you a really good idea of, if you're wanting to do a project on a piece of land, what can you pay for it? And it might not be what it's listed for. So it's there to give guidance during that condition period, or for someone listing a lot, let them know what that value is. It could have a really big value. One of the people we were working with had that large lot, that 15,000 square foot lot. And right now, if they only put 4 units on it, developer could really only justify paying around $1 million for this piece of land. Because when you split it up, you really only pay $250,000 per door for the land. But if it got rezoned, and the OCP is leaning towards it being 8 units that could fit on this piece of property, then the value is more in the $1.6 million range. And there are costs to go through rezoning and time, but it sets the price. So if someone was coming in and wanting a quick sale and wanting to write an offer with normal conditions, and they said they were going to build on it, they'd expect a price around $1 million, because that's the price of the land as it is. And if they wanted to sell to someone that might have a longer condition period, maybe if they're willing to accept an offer subject to rezoning, and there was a rezoning, it sets the target of what that price should be as well. So that's what we were able to do for someone recently, is just set the guidelines on what a developer could pay, and help disarm them a little bit. Some people think their land is worth $2 million when really it's worth $1 million. And it rather than them holding out for an offer and maybe missing the right priced offers or some really generous ones, we want to get that information to them as soon as possible. For developers, if you have developer clients looking for a piece of land, we can quickly get them. We're doing so many of these estimates. We're helping professional builders build these. We've got a lot of estimates that we're going through on different build styles, that we have a lot of data that we can really quickly put together the proformas for these. So to help someone analyze a lot in a quick way to feel safe about their investment. Because the normal process is you have to get plans, then estimate them, then talk to a finance guy. And we can do that we're equipped to do that in a really quick fashion. Is that overkill, David, or did that answer the question?
Well, yeah, and I think one of the benefits that you've brought up in the past has been that a lot of times people will go through the exercise of hiring an architect and, or getting designs and drawings and all this kind of stuff, and then they talk to the city and spend months and months trying to get what they think needs to be approved on that lot, and then they go to the bank, their banker, their mortgage broker, and then they find out, well, that's not going to work. It's not enough profit, and it gets turned down at that point. And they've spent all that money, right, and time and energy trying to put the project together, and they forgot that they need to start with a foundation. And that's what I see you providing, is that foundation with the the financial aspect, and say, well, this one's not going to pass the test because it doesn't have enough profit. The bank's not going to want to finance you, right? So it's kind of like engineering in reverse, starting with the financial first, correct?
Yeah, well, that's actually how Invision got started. I've collaborated with Keith and Xenia for years on different projects, and I had a lot of clients coming to me with what they thought was the perfect project. And I would look at it and I would put a proforma together that included all of the soft costs, all of the hard costs provided by their builder, and all of the interest and financing fees. And they'd be maybe at a 12% profit margin. And the bank would say, no, just sell the land. There's not enough profit in building it. It's too risky. And so either they'd have to pay a lot of cash and go and get expensive private financing, which private financing at 10 to 12%, if you're holding it too long and you only have 12% profit and you have the units for 6 months longer, you now made 6% profit. So it's very scary when the deals don't pencil, because the financing for deals that don't pencil is very expensive. Whereas a normal credit union would come in and finance a commercial project at prime plus 1.5, much lower interest rate. And they'd finance up to 75% of the cost of a project if it's properly designed and it has the right profit margin. Mm-hmm. It's funny you talk about financing, because is it better to build 6 units or 4? That was one of your questions. Is it better to develop in Victoria or one of the other municipalities? And it comes down to financing a lot of the time. If you're building 4 units on a single property, it can be financed residentially, so much cheaper interest rates. We have some banks who will finance these at prime minus 1%. Prime's currently 5.95, so they'd finance these at prime or 4.95% interest-only payments while you build, and loan you up to 80% of the cost. But you have to make enough income, either from your job, the rent from the units, or the people on the mortgage to qualify. But sometimes that's better. If you go and you build 5 or more units, it's considered commercial financing in the world of the banks. And then there's a different metric for qualifying altogether. You either qualify based on the sale of the projects, meaning you need to make 20% or more profit, or you need to have enough rent from the property that it 100% covers and has about a 20% profit rents to mortgage amount. So if you were an existing homeowner and you were even in the city of Victoria and you wanted to redevelop your property to keep it and have rental units, and it wasn't going to meet a 20% profit to sell with 6, we might look at building 4 units and keeping them as rentals from a financial perspective, because maybe you have a good job or you have a low mortgage, but you want to build these to keep. Well, then maybe building a total of 4 units is better because of the financing that you can obtain. But every case is unique. And so we, as you said, David, we model it forward from financing. What can you do and who are you doing this with? Who are you and what are you trying to do? And if it's just to sell it, we can help you with that too. But if you do want to build it, we would work with what your financial tools are, and then we would design a project that fits.
Sounds good.
Any last questions?
How long does it take to do one of these reviews? And are you backed up?
Great question, Patrick. It normally takes us about 5 days to coordinate ourselves to get out to a site to make sure that we can do that and do the review. The actual review in terms of our time is relatively quick because we have all the systems in place to do it. Where we would run into and put a hard timeline to it is if there were any nuances to the project, like trees and other stuff that would require a call to the city, because the city isn't very fast in returning phone calls these days on these projects. But if it is fitting within a municipality that we're common with, that we have something, within a 10 business day condition period, we can normally get these turned around. At the very least, in a quicker time frame, we can have a verbal on it where we might not have the full package put together, but we can sit down, and sometimes we meet with clients, Patrick, where I have the proforma done and the drawings, but we haven't assembled them, and we do a manual review. Something else that happens often is we don't have the sale prices for the units. So for example, if you were bringing the client in, we'd sit down all live and actually do the presentation live, where I actually would change the proformas based on what you think the units would sell for in the meeting to expedite it. And then we'd send a report out after. So we've done that often, because if we go out to the market to each component, we put together a plan and some units, and then we wait for some sales, comparative sales analysis numbers back on each of the layouts. Then we can put it together. It's much easier. We just kind of get in there, work as a team with yourself, and get the sales figures. You can have Matrix open on your end, kind of looking stuff up. We can put in some numbers and we can try. We can throw in different prices. Hey, what if you only got $600 a square foot or 7? And we can model it out and do the presentation. But the report might take a few days after that.
One of the things that I'll mention is that when we're looking at these pro formas, and I know in one of my clients that we're working with right now, really was impressed by the slush fund. I'll call it a slush fund. I guess you call it a contingency. But correct me if I'm wrong, but you put in quite a healthy contingency just for errors as well, right? And that's all included. When you look at that 20% profit, it does include quite a healthy contingency for mistakes or errors, or just change in economy, or change in the cost of concrete or wood, correct?
Yeah, depending on the level that we're at, as you get more detailed in the drawings, you can get more detailed in your pricing. So as you close the gap on time, the time before you start building, you can talk to people and find out pricing on concrete and wood, and we can update it. When we get in and we do the later phases of our project, we go into something called quantification, and this is Keith's area of expertise. And some of our next missing middle meeting that we're going to go through, we're going to dive deep into construction and constructability, where to save money, how to save money on these units, some tips on that. But we get together and we kind of measure and have a really good sense of board feet of lumber and cubic meters of concrete, so that as those things change, we evolve the proforma with our clients. So we don't do a one-time proforma, we actually do them as we go. But at the beginning phases, when we just have boxes on a piece of paper, we're often carrying a 10% contingency. And then also using a more rounded up number in terms of that. And then as we get more refined in our drawings, we get a little bit more refined in our price. But even when you go to build and we're live, we carry a 5% contingency. And that 5% is on top of the soft costs and the construction hard costs. So because there's room for the cities to ask for more when they're going through building permits, and that's a changing game. And we have to have room for other costs to come up.
Great. Can I ask Keith a question? Keith, I think part of the accuracy with you doing these pro formas too, and I know like you're a member of the Envision's development team, so your sons are in the business, so you've got a pretty day-to-day cost calculated in your head pretty well with most of these materials. Is that right?
Yeah, we keep it update that way. So I mean, we're on the other side tendering all the time and buying product all the time. So we have a pretty good handle on what costs per square foot or per board foot or cubic meter of what we have. And we build enough of these that I don't need a, complete set of drawings to know what floor, wall, and roof assemblies are, so that we can figure out the quantification early on here and lead the client to a very successful project by knowing the costs up front, choosing the right avenue for the type of structure and the amount of units that we're going to put on the property. So we're able to do that quite quickly and quite effectively.
So within this $2,000 report, you're getting pretty accurate numbers. I mean,
Not
even though it's rough, but you just off the top of your head.
$2,000 report is not a quantification of the project. The $2,000 report is a square foot area that's based upon previous projects of similar construction that we've done. There's not enough money for me to sit down for 6 or 8 hours and do a quantification of this project for the $2,000.
Right.
The $2,000 is a heck of a buy for the person who's looking at it. And it's a bit of a loss leader for us because we're looking to show the client what we can do, and hopefully he'll follow along and pick up the rest of the work and find the value in what Envision delivers.
Right.
Yeah. The detail though, because we do so many of these, David, we're coming in on a lot of them in the same range of price. So we would use a price similar to the last project that we did. At that point, we don't know when the client is going to build in the timeline, so we just carry a higher contingency in. But I would say very accurate in that we have reference material to pull on. A quantification budget is an extremely detailed budget. And as a financier, I'm not used to getting the level of budgets that we do at Envision. I'm used to getting almost a back of the napkin. The level of budget that we give in our $2,000 is about the level of budget that I was used to getting for financing projects all the way at the end. So it is very detailed, including that. But the full quantification that we jump into is a little bit more detailed.
I mean, for the past 30 years, I've worked with quantity surveyors and understand what they need in order to have financing approved for a client. And we've got a set form that's accepted by, I haven't seen it not accepted by any quantity surveyor at this point in time, because before you get a project done, you have to have verification of costs by a third party, which is a quantity surveyor in most of these projects.
So there was a question that just chatted about, they came up about what's next after. So we do the initial review for $2,000, and we have a full package that we go through in terms of getting someone from A to Z in missing middle. So all the way from should they buy the lot, all the way to approved building permit. The next phase is a more detailed viability study. And that's where we get into doing a little bit of more layouts, what might fit, a little more detailing. And then that's where we would go into the quantification phase, where we use phase 1 to kind of look at maybe there's 4 to 6 options on the lot. We would use phase 1 to kind of decide, one, do you want to develop on your lot? Is it a good lot to buy? Are you paying the right price? Someone would connect with that and say, yep, I want to move forward. Phase 2 that we do is the quantification, so that a client can get really clear on costs, equity, etc. And we put together a proforma with a much higher level. We would communicate with the city, and we'd start getting into what's called schematic and preliminary design so that we can price it. And then we do a more detailed viability study to really finalize which option they're going to go with. At the end of our 2 initial phases, which are $2,000, and then the next phase is $8,000, you've really got a really strong direction. Your unit shape, type, layout, parking, analysis, communication with the city's done. Then that's where we go into designing your floor plan or schematic design, which was the drawings that show the bedroom locations, the bathroom, and all of those pieces. And when we do that design, we do something called value engineering at the same time. And for anyone who doesn't know what value engineering is, that's where we look at the stacking of units for walls and load to keep costs down. So for example, if you have a properly stacked unit, you can avoid using steel to carry loads and keep your costs down. Same with roof lines and other places, deck and patio locations. We look at all of those things to keep the cost down.
I think the rest of the question was compare next steps after the report to what others offer. And as far as I know, you guys are the only game in town that puts all this together. Certainly I've been in the business 30 years, so just really so pleased to be working with you guys and that I found you. But maybe if you can answer that question.
Yeah, the normal process is if you're building a 4-unit or less, you may go and talk to a home designer, a home design firm. And if you're building 4 units or more, you need a licensed architect to do your design and to stamp the drawings. And so the comparison between what we do and just going and hiring your own designer instead of working us in a collaborative process with the Xenia and XV Designs is that we do the analysis to prove out which option works first, so that when you choose and fall in love with your design, it also made the most financial sense. And the goal was to stop getting people to pay for 2 and 3 sets of designs, where some people were taking, we just worked with somebody and we said, wow, how long did it take you to get that drawing set done? And they said 2.5 months they were waiting to see anything. They gave them some direction on what they wanted, and it took 2.5 months before they saw anything. And then at that point, that's when they came in and they started to give a little bit of a direction. It ended up coming to us, and we saw some things in the value engineering where the costs were a little bit high, and we had some tips with them to save costs. We had another client that hired an architect to do a feasibility on a 6 lot, which was the right step in hiring an architect. But the design was also very expensive because it included underground parking, which when we went in to do that was quite a bit more expensive. Great question. What would be the typical time frame? Our time frames right now, a lot of it is workload dependent on what we're coming in to do. The writing and the putting of the reports together takes quite a bit of time, but our design work to do the first initial phases really speeds us up in the long run. If you're a home designer and you are designing something without a lot of direction, there's a lot of room for your own creativity to maybe delay in the process. Because we have a lot of direction going into these projects, we're actually quite a bit faster to get our designs done and in. But for right now, there's quite a boom going on. So for right now, we're operating on a pretty fast timeline. Xenia, are you still with us? Do you have an idea of like how fast we're getting, say, into a development permit for someone if all things were going well right now and our workload was manageable? What do you think our timeline is?
So on like a typical missing middle, if the site is not complicated and such, you know, we'll start turning it around on our end, you know, fairly quickly. So within like 5 to 6 weeks, we would be almost there to sort of in that final phases, but then we have to involve some consultants. So someone like a civil consultant, landscape consultant, arborist. So we're a little bit dependent on how well that team would do. We do have people that we sort of work with and know that they'll deliver, but usually from that point that when we are ready, you know, it's an additional 3 to 4 weeks until they're ready. And so overall it's probably about 2.5 months from start to finish versus someone else who would do 2.5 months to kind of get you guys something to start commenting on. So it'd be a much faster process than typical kind of office.
There was a question about price. So all in from start to finish right now, we're coming in around $70,000 for our phase of work, but there are other sub-consultants that are needed to comment on your plans going through. And that's our price to go all the way from the beginning of a project to an approved building permit right now. But the sub-consultants and range, so to have a tangibly approved development permit in the city of Victoria where you have plans approved and then you're going into the next set of drawings, I think that we're looking at around to get to that phase. Keith, do you know what it was for the sub-consultants to get into development permit? Are we looking at about $30,000 or $40,000 between all of the different people to get into development permit phase?
Not to get the development permit, because that's about a $20,000 fee to get the development permit. And then it will be about another 25 to 30,000 for the consultants to get building permit done.
Because building permits where there's a lot more of their detailing that's needed for the drawings on the mechanical systems, the electrical and the plumbing, and the structural parts that they have to put in. So the total cost to get into a development permit's about $50,000, and then you've got a little bit more between us and sub-consultants, and then you got another, you're in and around 100 to 120, but all of that's factored into those soft costs that we have listed on that sheet. So if you need or would like to connect offline to do a walkthrough of what a proforma looks like and what some of these costs are like, happy to answer those questions for anyone. $70,000 sounds like an architectural plan alone. How can you guys provide that much value? Great question. One, a big part of my passion and Keith's passion is giving back. As somebody who finances these projects for people, it's heartbreaking when they don't work. So us joining forces and the efficiencies of us working together allows us to make critical decisions faster and easier for clients to work with us, and thus easier for us to provide better results quicker, which keeps our costs down. When someone doesn't really know what they're doing, it's very laborious on the design side because they don't have the feedback to make those decisions. So a big part of it is our collaboration, and the other side of it is on the other end of these projects, in my other business where I was financing a lot of these, people would come to me and they would have projects that would die. So I was spending the time there for free, not funding any projects. So helping out on this side to see projects come together, it's just much more efficient side for us all.
Much more efficient for you as a mortgage broker.
Oh yeah, I know if a client came to me from Invision that they had a project that penciled before it arrived on my desk, and I'd be like, yep, I'll take that client because I know that the project works. Whereas before, especially on the commercial financing side, it's very risky taking on a client. You work with them, interview them, collect all their documents, work with them sometimes for 3 to 5 months while they collect all their documents. Numerous interviews, getting to know them, getting excited about helping them, and then you finally get the documents in the budget and it doesn't pencil. And preventing that cost gets passed along in the value we offer at Invision Developments.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot of information tonight, Tyler, and I think we'll wrap it up unless somebody has a burning question that they type in right away. But other than that, we covered a lot of ground, and I would like to see us do this once a month for sure. So I'm gonna just say that the next webinar would be the 3rd week. Well, I guess we're getting into Christmas, aren't we? I'll have to look at the calendar. But let me see. Where are we? December. Actually, yeah, the next the third Tuesday is actually the 17th. So then
may or may not, that might be a big Christmas party night. Maybe take a poll about what's
about the next one. Sure.
Maybe go early first week of January or something to which we can maybe do
on maybe the 7th. Okay. Well, we've got everyone email that was participating in this one and the last one. So I'll make sure that an invite gets out to everyone for our next program. And
yeah,
we're
for a split second. And if you guys like, we want these to be valuable, so we welcome questions on or suggestions on what you guys want to see covered in these. So basically, whatever you want to know, we'll have a schedule of these and what topics they'll cover. Like once we organize ourselves a little bit better, we'll say, you know, this date will have these topics. And so if you need something, if you have any specific questions, just send them our way so David can then organize them. You know, if we get the same question over and over, then we understand, because once this is all we kind of do day in and day out, so we lose touch a little bit with what people, the level that people are actually at. So if everyone is more in the beginning or kind of midway, so we'll organize ourselves based on your questions as well, and that would be super helpful to know what we should bring to the table more. And you know, if it's examples or whatever, like just let us know.
Thanks, Tanya.
awesome. Okay. Well,
Perfect.
I think we'll wrap things up, Tyler, unless you have something else.
No, thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you. I see a lot of notes coming through. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to doing another one of these with a deep dive into another corner. Maybe not municipalities, might go into construction. I think was something that we talked about, constructability and construction methods. But thanks again, David, for hosting.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Thanks again for showing up.
Thanks, Al.